so I know that you're ready. It's always lovely to see some smiling faces as well. That would be super helpful. Thank you so much. Some cameras going on. Thank you. That's really nice. Nice to see. Hello, hello. Hi to those of you who are waving. Thank you. That's lovely. Brilliant. Okie dokie. We'll make a start on our session together, looking at using writing journals in the primary classroom. Just to introduce myself, in case you haven't worked with me before, I'm Tree Christopher, and I'm one half of Dandelion Learning. Some of you may have worked with the other half of Dandelion Learning, Pet Henshaw, who organises the free session on questioning, so questioning to develop comprehension. So if you haven't booked on that one, then do get yourself booked on that one. It's totally free as well. Our first slide is just our social media slide. So if you use social media, please do follow us. It'd be really great if you could follow us and perhaps even share one of our free training posts. We want to get this information out to as many teachers as possible. So you've got all of our details there. And Pet particularly works really hard to make sure that our social media is up to date with book recommendations, information regarding teaching, and training information as well. Okay, so we're going to be having a look at using writing journals and be working together for the next hour. So I promise I will finish by 5 o'clock, because I know that I am taking up your time after school. So thank you very much for signing on. Okay, just to get us thinking first of all about children as writers. So what do children need to be successful writers? What skills and attributes do they need to become successful writers? Have a little think and pop your ideas on the chat. But also, just to say as well, as we go through, if you have any questions, do pop those on the chat. Hopefully I'll answer them throughout the presentation, but if not, I'll have a look at them at the end and make sure I answer them then. So as I said, have a little think. What do children need to become successful writers? Skills and attributes. What do they need? Pop it on the chat for me. Enthusiasm, yeah, absolutely. That will to want to do it, if you like. They've got to feel they want to do it. Yeah, that's half the battle with lots of children, definitely. Anything else? Anyone else pop some ideas up? Skills and attributes for children to become successful writers. Experiences, definitely. That basic understanding of structure, yeah, definitely. Depending on what type of writing you're writing, you need to understand the format of that writing, whether it's a fiction or a story, or whether you're, writing a piece of non-fiction. A wide range of reading experiences, definitely. Purpose, imagination, phonic knowledge, and sentence structure. Yeah, all of those things, definitely. Anything else? Listening to lots of stories, yeah, absolutely. Willing to share, and that resilience to keep going, to realise that it might be tricky at times, but you keep going, you keep having a go, definitely. Anything else that anyone wants to share? Skills and attributes to become successful writers. Just pick up on some of those other. Do keep adding ideas, but just to pick up on what some of you have said. So experiences has come up a lot. I'm going to talk about that in just a moment. That business of stories and listening to lots of stories. Absolutely. I think that's really, really key. We all know our best writers are our avid readers, and that children who read widely and read for pleasure will perform better across the board, including in their writing. And so I know some of you have been on my free reading for pleasure training, but if you haven't, again, that might support you. It's interesting because when schools say to me, we need to improve writing, we need to do more writing, I often say to them, actually, you need to do more reading. And it's that absorption of those stories and those plot structures and those knowledge of those different characters and settings, which gives children what Pi describes as that narrative storehouse with which to be imaginative. So I think that's absolutely key. We've got here confidence. Yeah, if you believe you can or you believe you can't, you're right, aren't you? We want our children to see themselves as successful writers from the earliest of stages, because if they believe they cannot write and they don't see themselves as writers, it gets harder and harder to combat as they go through the years. Not afraid to make mistakes. Yeah, that culture of actually, juicy mistakes, or that, when we're in that that edge of learning, that actually, the challenge zone or the pit, some people call it, where actually, yeah, it's tricky. We might make a mistake, but actually we can climb out and we can learn from it. So yeah, really, really good. And of course, we need that, the basic skills, the phonic knowledge, the sentence structure, the imagination, a purpose. Yes, writing for a real purpose is really, really key, actually. And lots of research suggests that it makes a real difference to whether children want to write, if they actually have a real purpose to write. So wherever possible, I would incorporate that real purpose, because firstly, then the children can see a reason behind it. But actually, it's motivating to them, isn't it? We do a lot on real purpose. And a couple of years ago, we ran a competition for Year 5-6 teachers, persuasive writing competition, and children had to write letters to free, they could choose between two different animals. There was an elephant called Marley, who was kept in captivity in Sri Lanka, and they wanted to release her to a sanctuary in Thailand. And there was also an orca called Morgan, who is unfortunately in captivity in a place called Loro Park in Tenerife, like a SeaWorld type place. And the children actually wrote real letters to the parks, to the presidents and prime ministers of these countries, to local MPs, and they got real letters back. And that was so motivational to those children. So the more you can have that real purpose and audience, the better. Brilliant. So lots and lots of ideas there. And we're going to pick up on some of those as we go through. I just wanted to share with you a little quote, which I love. Okay. My advice to writers is this: walk, talk, breathe, laugh, cry, fall, rise, fail, succeed, run, jump, love, hate, hide, seek, learn, work, play, feel, live, and then write it down. So basically, it's about that business of experience, isn't it? We have to give children experiences from which to write. And I think that's really, really key. And if the children are not having those broad experiences at home, which I know some of our children aren't, and that you see that coming out in the stories and the writing they do all the time, don't you? I remember reading writing where children, and I mean, we are based down in Cornwall, and yet there'll be children who are writing about, not a trip to the beach, unfortunately, but a trip to their local Asda or Sainsbury's, because that was their experience at the weekend. Can I just say, if you've joined us late, because I know a few extra people have joined on, I am recording the meeting. And also, if you can pop your cameras on so I can see you're there, it would be super helpful. I really don't like just talking to a blank screen. It's lovely to see some faces. So if you are able to pop your cameras on, that would be really grateful. Thank you so much. Thank you. So talking about that real experience, I just wanted to share an example. Oh, hello.
Hi. Sorry, I can't put my camera on because it doesn't affect my audio. So I just want to make sure I'm able to hear you.
Don't worry. If you've got a reason why you can't pop your camera on, no problem at all. Thank you. Okay, so what I was going to say was, thinking about that real experience, if our children aren't having those broad and exciting real experiences at home, then we need to bridge that gap in school. We need to think about how we can create that real experience in school. And this is a lovely example of a class who were Year 3-4 class, and they were looking at Wind in the Willows. And they wanted the children to write a diary entry as if they were Mr. Toad, talking about, his day, how he'd been careering around, country lanes, etc., in his vintage car and so forth. However, of course, that's quite tricky for Year 3-4 children. They don't actually have any real experience, hopefully, of that. And for them, it's a bit abstract, really. So what the teacher did was she organised for the school to have the local go-karting company come in. And so the children had an opportunity in the playground to have a go at go-karting, to give them an experience similar to that of Mr. Toad careering around those country lanes. So they were able to career around the course on their playground. And what was fabulous about it was that as the children were actually having a go at the go-karting, they worked with a buddy. So they had a partner, and the partner recorded, and they did it in different ways. Some of them had writing journals or notebooks, some of them had whiteboards and so forth, clipboards, and they recorded some of the feelings and thoughts as the child was having that experience. So for example, some of them had word mats to select from, so words like exhilarating. Some of them talked about how they felt the wind rushing through their hair, or the sound of the tires screeching and so forth. And they captured all of these words and phrases and bits of language so that when the children went back to write, they were at their fingertips. And that was so powerful, because I know that so many of you work so hard to give your children fabulous experiences like this. They go on trips, they do all these different things. But if the language is not captured in the moment, most likely it will be lost. Even if, you know, I've been into classes where they've had an amazing experience, the bell's gone, they've got out for break, you know, they come back 20 minutes later even, and, you know, they've forgotten what it felt to be that character. They've forgotten what that experience was like, let alone if it's the next day and they come back in the morning. So capturing that language in the moment is a really, really powerful thing to do. And as I said, there's different ways in which you can do that. You can do that through your whiteboards, recording devices, and ultimately your writing journals, which I'm going to explain in just a moment. Just to say as well, we can't always afford to have go-karting people come into our school and so forth and give that real experience. I mean, we do our best, and I'm sure you do lots of trips and have lots of visitors, but, you know, sometimes budgets are an issue. We've got issues with the pandemic. You can't always give that real experience. So if you can't give that real experience, what you could do is make it almost real through drama. So rather than them actually having a go in the go-kart, could they go outside and mime that they're racing around in the car and chase around a course, and actually their partner still asks them about how they felt and the words to describe the feelings, and again, you know, exhilarated and wind in hair, etc. So you can kind of give that drama experience if you can't give a real experience. But whether it's drama or real experience, we want to capture the language in the moment, because vocabulary, of course, plays a massive part in developing children's writing. And just to say as well that, you know, vocabulary is really key, not just to improving children's writing, but actually into improving their life chances. There's a couple of studies out there, one that says the number of words a child knows when they're 5, and the other actually says the number of words that they know when they are 2.5 is one of the clearest indicators of their ultimate life chances. And as you can see from this research, you know, the vocabulary at age 5 is being one of the best predictors of whether children who experience social deprivation in childhood were able to escape poverty in later life. Okay, so thinking about vocabulary, just thinking about how you can develop vocabulary through the use of writing journals. So what do we really mean by our writing journals? What are they and how are they used? So basically, writing journals are a place to capture super vocabulary, fabulous words and phrases that children can use again and again and again in their writing, okay? And most schools will have a system where they have a whole class journal in reception, and year 1 they tend to have a large book, 1 per table, so maybe a scrapbook as their writing journal, and then from year 2 up they have their own book. And most schools go with an A4 just because they fill up quite quickly, and actually, you know, if you've got a smaller book, you know, it doesn't last very long. In every class, we recommend that the teacher has their own journal to use for modelling. Now, we used to always suggest to use a big art book. My one was a big art book, but actually recently, having talked to a teacher, she said that she has the same size as the children, so an A4 book, and she pops it on the visualizer. So either works well, whether you prefer a big book or you know, a book which is exactly the same as the children's on the visualizer. So some people like it to mirror the children's, some people like to have a large one. And you might have resources to support, such as descriptosaurus, which I'll explain later. And just to say that within the writing journal, do not include detailed toolkits or success criteria if you wish to use these journals to support for assessed writing. Okay, so that's really important. However, you can include story maps if you use Talk for Writing. So some of you will be using the storytelling approach, and you can pop those in there. So what do we include in our writing journal? So obviously they're personal to your school, so you might not be the same as another school, but mostly you want to have a collection of language based around character, based around setting, and based around transferable language banks that children can use whenever they are writing. So for example, in year 2, you may have good characters. For example, words to describe good characters, words to describe bad characters, other words for said, other words for walked, maybe adverbs of time for settings, beach, forest, etc., and so forth. And then what you do is you select the best transferable vocabulary from your character studies that you have done during your English sessions, and you would add those to the good or bad character banks. So what I mean here is if you were doing Miss Honey, if you're looking at the word Matilda, the book Matilda, you might have generated some language around Miss Honey as a generic good character. You could pluck that language out and transfer it into your good character section of your writing journal, so that the next time children are writing about a good character, they could use some of those Miss Honey words. Okay, so the language is transferable. So it doesn't just describe Miss Honey, we can use it to describe another good character that we're writing about. And similarly with our bad characters, you might have done a character study on Miss Trunchbull and generated some language around bad characters, belligerent, terrifying, aggressive, or whatever. Once again, you could pluck your favorite bits of language and pop that under your bad characters within your writing journal. So the children have got that at their fingertips when they want to go to write. In a Key Stage 2 example, as you go up into Key Stage 2, writing journals work in the same way. However, here you're just going to have a bit more detail. So, for example, instead of having good or bad characters, you might have evil characters, sly characters, funny characters, fantasy characters, depending on, of course, the types of text that you're analysing through novel study or as part of your English unit, or, you know, guided reading or whatever, depending on how you organise your English sessions. But also you can start to have a bit of choice there. So not every child's writing journal needs to look the same. So you might have everyone looking at evil characters, sly characters, funny characters, and some children might say to you, oh, we're reading a really funny book at the moment, could we include funny characters? And you might say yes, absolutely. So some children might decide to have an extra section or two in Key Stage 2. And similarly with regards to the settings, so here you just have more detail on your settings. So you might have fantasy settings, ancient Rome, mountains, rainforest, and once again something like haunted house. And again, this would depend on the text and topics that you're doing, and once again it could depend on children's interests. So that haunted house one could be where a child says, oh, actually we're reading some spooky books, I would like to have a haunted house setting to add vocabulary to. And what they would do is they'd have a page for each setting. They might have images on the pages, and then they would add vocabulary and language around that that they can then pluck out when they want to describe a setting. And just the same for their characters. Just to show you an image from mine. Here you can see I've got my beach image. You probably can't read that very well, but in the middle I've got shimmering blue waves, turquoise ocean, and rippled onto the sand. And what I've done is I've actually stuck the appropriate vocabulary where it would go on the picture. So you children can do that as well to sort of add that memory hook and make it even clearer. And here we've got a mountain one. So with just some generic language around the edge there, menacing, steep, gigantic, towering, majestic, magical. But then we've also got perilous peaks, and I've stuck that on the peaks. And then similarly for forest, generic forest language around the edges, but then we've got about swooping palms swaying in the breeze over the images of palms there. And some of this language I have plucked directly from a really fabulous resource called Descriptosaurus. So I don't know if you guys have got this book. If you haven't, I would say go and buy it. We don't get any money for recommending anything, but if I could have a penny for every time I'd recommended this book, I'd probably be retired now in the Bahamas in one of those lovely palm tree pictures that we just saw. So this book came out quite a few years ago now, and it says Descriptosaurus for ages 8 to 14. And what it does is it gives you whole sections for character, all different aspects of character, from eyes, nose, hair, stature, to also personality type, but also all different settings. It's really fabulous, and it has words, sentences, and phrases that you can use with the children. You can you know, analyze, discuss, and magpie and take out to use in their writing journals. So it's a really, really, really super book, Descriptosaurus. And some of the language which I just showed you, I plucked from that book. They also have these little genre specific Descriptosaurus which are really good for Key Stage 2. So here you've got one which is specific to action and adventure, one for myths and legends, one for ghost stories, and one for fantasy. And recently they brought out the long awaited descriptosaurus for ages 5 to 9. So there is a Key Stage 1 book now, because I'm always being asked by teachers. So don't forget to have a look for the Key Stage 1 book. I would suggest that teachers have 1 copy per teacher of this book, either Key Stage 1 or Key Stage 2. Some of my schools I've worked with even have 1 per table for the kids, but that's quite ambitious. And you don't need that because you can photocopy bits and so on. But these, you know, depending on the size of your school, you could share those across because you wouldn't all need to use them at the same time. Also in your writing journals, you might have, you know, other language banks, things like other words for said. You know, you could have them categorized in Key Stage 2 to sort of angry words for said, like barked. You could have other words for walked. You could have adverbs, sentences of 3 for description and action, section for non-fiction, which might include some of the useful language, like a page of persuasive devices, for example. So those are the types of things that you could include in your writing journal. Okay. Just to say as well, our children tend to take them and they carry them up to the next year. So basically they keep their writing journal and they take it with them to the following year. And that's really powerful because when the children join you, rather than you having a go and saying, okay, let's do other words for said, you have a look and see what other words for said they've already got, because you can build on that. So you're building on the knowledge they've already got. And anecdotally, a TA told us that her son had actually taken his up to secondary and found it really useful. So you keep them going and they keep building. So thinking about some activities that could support using writing journals. So you could play a game with the children like the powerful verb game. So for this one, what I'd like you to do is just give me 5, just jot down first of all on a piece of scrap paper or a whiteboard 5 other words for walk, 5 more powerful verbs for walk, and then choose your favourite one to pop on the chat. Favourite one to pop on the chat. Strut, we've got. Any more? Scurry, stroll, parade. Mosey, it's a nice one. Paced, plodded. Yeah, brilliant. Dragging. So lots of different other words for said, walk, and or sauntered. And so with the children, what I would do is get them to have a go at this game. So get them to come up with 5 or 6 other words for walk. And then what they do is they choose one of them, pop it in their head, don't tell their partner, act it out and see if their partner can guess. It's a brilliant game because what it does is it's broadening and deepening children's vocabulary. So obviously a child will choose to act out a word they're familiar with. So if they don't know what sauntered means, they won't pick that one. If they know what sachet means, they'll show that one. And what you often find is that children who didn't know what the word sachet meant, once they've seen their partner act that out and they've got a memory hook in their head, they've seen someone sachet across a room, they actually know what it means and they're much more likely to use it effectively within their writing. Because when I talked about vocabulary acquisition earlier, yes, it is about the number of words you know, but what's equally important is about that depth of understanding of vocabulary. How often do children latch onto a wow word, but they don't really use it effectively in their writing because they don't really have a depth of understanding? This drama activity gives them that depth of understanding because they get to witness someone acting out the word. So then they can actually make sense of that word and think about, well, when would I use that with my character? When would a character sachet across a room? You can play this in pairs, groups, or even as a whole class. Also, it's quite useful when developing new vocabulary to get children to, if they watch a partner act out a word they're not familiar with, they then have a go themselves. So they've seen someone sachet, let them have a go at sachaying. Again, it just puts that memory in their head. Just because of a kind of extension of the powerful verb game is a word exploration graph. So what you would do here is you would take some of that language to describe walked and you'd pop it on this graph. So here we've got slow, fast, negative, positive. Okay, so when we're thinking about language to describe walked, staggered is often quite negative. You know, someone staggers if they are very unwell, or if there's a happy hour maybe and they've been in the pub too long, but it's not usually very positive and it's not usually very quick. Okay, strolled, however, is usually quite positive. You know, there's nothing sinister about strolling along on a summer's day or whatever, but it's not usually very quick. We don't stroll at speed. Tiptoed, however, is a bit trickier. It's neither positive or negative, because actually you could be tiptoeing around up to no good, or you could be just tiptoeing in a really happy-go-lucky way. But tiptoeing is usually quite slow. You wouldn't normally, again, be tiptoeing at a really fast pace. So what this does is it allows children to explore their understanding of the vocabulary, and it allows them to think about, you know, what does it really mean to me? Is it positive? Is it negative? Is it quick? Is it slow? And when they've actually had a go at that, they can think about, how does that link to my character? Would that be appropriate for my character that I'm describing? And these types of activities can go into your writing journals, no problem. And similarly, you can do this for said. So this time we've got loud, soft, negative, positive. Okay, so loud, soft, negative, positive. And once again, we've plotted some of those words on. So bellowed being loud and usually quite negative, whispered being in between, but obviously quite soft, and hissed. What I'd like you guys to do is have a look at the next list and just get yourself a piece of scrap paper, draw yourself this graph, and just see where you would put these words. Just see where you would put these words. And I'll just give you a couple of minutes to have a go at plotting these words on your said graph. Okay, plotting these words on your said graph. So this is your axis: loud, soft, negative, positive. And here are your words. So have a little go for a moment. Have a little go for a moment. I know a couple of people have popped questions on the chat, and I promise I will get to those at the end. Okay, just give you another minute. Once you're done, just have a little look at those words and just think, were there any which were trickier than others, which made you think, oh, I'm not sure? And is there any that made you think a bit more than the others? Pop those on the chat for me, the ones that made you think a bit more than the others. Okay, so we've got, yeah, coaxed is an interesting one, isn't it? Because you think about kind of coaxing someone probably to maybe do something they don't want to do. So is it negative? But on the other hand, you could be coaxing them away from a dangerous situation. So it could be positive. Yeah, begged as well. You know, that could be positive or negative, couldn't it? and interjected too. So actually, a lot of them depend on the context, and that's really important as well, to get children thinking about that and talking about that. What I love about this activity is there's no real right or wrong. Of course, you know, we will all have subtle differences in our understanding and nuances of words. However, we can make you know, a general decision and see if we agree. So what's quite powerful to do as well, I've seen in schools, is to have this as a big display in the classroom. And then what they do is every time a child comes across another word for said, they actually go up and pop it up on the display using a bit of blue tack where they think they go. And then at the end of the day, as a class, they have a discussion about it and decide if they're happy. And they can add those words to their writing journal. So it's really, really useful, because what it means is you can continually build this. And when children are thinking about, you know, how to describe how a character's walked, they've got that memory hook there from the game. They've got, you know, the language captured so they can decide, but they're not just plucking randomly at words, which is what sometimes happens when children just generate lots of other words for said or walked, and they don't really understand what they mean. And then, of course, they don't use them effectively. Whereas these two activities support children to actually have a deeper understanding of what that language means, so that they can actually then apply that to the specific character that they choose to write about. So really useful little activities there to go in the writing journal and as a big class display. If you are looking for activities like this, other activities to develop vocabulary, just to let you know, we've got 2 for 1 on our premium training. So that's an hour-and-a-half session for £55 for 2 teachers or 2 TAs. So you can mix and match that. That's available if you are interested. And similarly, we've got 2 for 1 on our teaching of grammar. Okay, let's have a look at an example of a child's writing journal. This one is a year 2-1 from a school that we were working with. Here they've got powerful verbs. So they've got glide, plod, bounded, it's hard to read, crumpled, clambered. They've got some dazzling phrases there. As fast as his legs could carry him, not 1, not 2, but 3, and so forth. But also what they did at this particular school, which I really liked, is that they had a big display of a magpie nest. When children came up with a word that they wanted to add to their writing journal, what they would do is they would pop it on the nest, okay, and then at the end of the day, the teacher would sort those according to word class, which is quite useful as well. So they would sort them according to word class and check that they're all spelt correctly, and then the teacher could pop them into their, the child could pop them into their writing journal. And also in this school, they had magpie tokens. So what they did here was the teacher really wanted to reinforce that the children were using and transferring that gorgeous language in their writing journal over to their general day-to-day writing, that they were using it, you know, in their stories, in their reports, and so on. And so every time they used one of their words from their writing journal effectively, they actually got a magpie token, and when they got 10 tokens, they got a prize from the head teacher. So that was something they did in one school. You guys will know whether you use that sort of reward system and whether it works for your kids or not. I know some schools don't, some schools do, so I just thought I would share that with you. Okay, so when can we use a writing journal then? So we'd want to be using our writing journal during shared and guided writing. Okay, that's really, really important. So, you know, you will have that writing journal so children can have their ideas scribed, you know, at the, you know, at their fingertips, if you like. However, also for modeling. So when you guys are modeling, you know, and or demonstrating writing, doing a bit of shared writing, having your actual writing journal is really useful. So if I was doing some demonstration writing and I wanted to show that my character was angry, then I might say, okay, hang on a minute, I'm going to turn to my said page. I'm going to have a look at my angry words for said. I'm going to use bellowed in this instance. Okay, I might get my children talking in partners, looking at their list of words, deciding which word would they use to describe their angry, how that angry character said something. So you want to be using your writing journal all the time during that shared and guided writing, and also during that shared and guided reading for gathering language. So during shared and guided reading, when we hear a fabulous word or a fabulous phrase, or some gorgeous vocabulary or a lovely bit of description, a child can decide that they want to jot that into their writing journal. And so that's really, really useful as well, because of course we don't want every single writing journal looking exactly the same. And, you know, not every bit of language will appeal to every child. Different children will be inspired by different words and phrases and bits of language. But we want children to be acting as magpies. We want them to be looking out for fabulous words and phrases and then thinking, I wish I'd written that. I'd love to use that in my writing. And then it can go into their writing journal. Just to say, writing journals don't need to be marked. However, you must check the spelling is correct. The last thing you want a child doing is writing out a word or a phrase continually in their stories that they've plucked from the writing journal when it's not spelt right. So that's the only thing you need to check. You also want to encourage children to be magpieing language during their independent reading and writing and when they're at home. So what some schools do is they give the children post-it notes so that when they're at home, they can jot down words, which they can then bring back into school, get the spelling checked again, and if it's approved, it can go into the writing journal. So you're building that writing journal all of the time. So as I said, also during that read aloud, that novel study, when you're sharing poetry, they'll have that writing journal with them all of the time. So where they're doing pair and group work, they might be doing those grammar and warm-up games or vocabulary games like we've just looked at. And when they go to do their independent reading and writing, because when they're reading independently, we want them magpieing language. And when they're writing independently is when we want them actually using it. So we want them actually, having a go at using that language. Assessment of writing is likely to be independent if, just a little reminder here really, it emerges from a text, topic, visit or curriculum experience in which pupils have had the opportunity to discuss and rehearse what is to be written about. Enables pupils to use their own ideas and provides them with an element of choice, for example, writing from a perspective of a character they've chosen themselves, has been edited if required by the pupil without the support of the teacher, although this may be in response to self, peer or group evaluation, and if produced by pupils who have, if required, sought out classroom resources such as dictionaries and thesauruses without prompting to do so by the teacher. So it's really important that the writing journals become part of your classroom culture and your everyday practice. And as long as they are, and as long as the children are adding to them independently and selecting the vocabulary independently for their independent writing, they are absolutely allowed to use them. And I think you're kind of missing a trick if they don't, because schools who've got them up and running, the children have got that fabulous language at their fingertips. So, they really are a useful resource. Now, of course, when you're teaching children how to use writing journals, you will guide them on what vocabulary to put in and what vocabulary to pluck out. But once they get used to those, and particularly towards the end of Key Stage 2, yes, we want them using them independently, which is why it's really nice to give them opportunities to add language that they want to pick, because we don't want every single one looking the same. We don't want every page looking the same. So other ways that you can support that language development to add to your writing journal. So things like word of the day, word of the week. Some schools will have a word of the day and, and then at the end of the week, they pick their favourite and that's word of the week. Just talking about word of the day, recently I worked with a school and their word of the day was dilapidated. Okay, the word of the day was dilapidated. Which year group do you think that was? Pop on the chat for me. Which year group do you think that was? Dilapidated. Year 4, we've got one suggestion. Let's have any more. Year 2, year 6, year 2, 5. No one's got it yet. Any other ideas by process of elimination? 1, not quite. 3, no. There's only one left, I think. It was reception. You're absolutely right. And I think it's really interesting because actually there is no ceiling on the language we can use with our children. We want to be ambitious with the vocabulary we use, and all language is abstract to young children. So there is no reason why we cannot use a word like dilapidated, as long as we introduce it in a way that's meaningful to them and makes sense to them. I don't know if any of you have ever heard of anything called the T-Rex effect. And basically this just looks at how very, very young children are able to make sense of dinosaur names. And I've experienced this, myself with one of my best friend's little boys. When he was about 2, he knew the name of every single dinosaur. He could even match, he thought he was reading, he wasn't reading, he was recognizing the name of the dinosaur, and he would match that with that dinosaur. And he would correct me with my pronunciation of the dinosaur name, which was very, very embarrassing. Now, you would never expect to use, a word as long or with such irregular spelling patterns as they have with a young child. You absolutely wouldn't. But because children are often so excited by dinosaurs, they're so mesmerized by them, they're so motivated by them, they actually can cope with the language because they're excited by it. They've got that visual image, they know what the dinosaur looks like, the sound it makes, and they want to learn about dinosaurs. So they're not worried about a word like Diplodocus or Tyrannosaurus Rex or whatever. And it's the same with all language. If we can get children excited about language and excited about a word, as long as we teach it explicitly and explain it in a way which the children can relate to, we can use any word with a young child. There is no ceiling. So do be ambitious with your vocabulary. We expect young children to use phrases like split digraph. We can certainly use dilapidated. So in this example, the teacher came in and she said, "Oh, that pea shed looks so dilapidated. It's in a terrible state." And then throughout the day, she kept referring to things as being dilapidated. And then at the very end of the day, she put up a picture of a ramshackle building and asked the children to describe it. And lo and behold, they described it as dilapidated because throughout the day, she'd been referring to that word. And there are lots of ways you can explicitly teach vocabulary. And I do look at this on my vocabulary session, but I think it's really important to be ambitious about vocabulary right from the youngest age. And of course, children love going home and having a word that perhaps their parents don't know, or sharing a word that parents might not have heard before or didn't expect them to know. And then at the end of the week, you can vote on your word of the week. And I think that's really exciting too. Another super way of developing language is poem a day. So poem a day is exactly what it sounds like, sharing a poem on a daily basis with your class. So very quickly, you can start off, you share the poem, but you can quickly hand that over to the children. And it's so powerful. If you were to think of, sharing a poem on a daily basis 4 or 5 times a week, over a month, over a half term, over a year, all that extra exposure to high quality language and vocabulary that your children will get is phenomenal. And it's within poetry that language really comes alive, if you think of metaphor, simile and imagery. And yet poetry can be the unit that falls off the end. It can also be less likely that children have a poetry book at home or as a reading book or read one for pleasure. So the more we can do to support poem a day, the better. And it might only take 2 minutes out of your day. It doesn't require planning or preparation. And as I said, it might take less than a minute. We're so passionate about this that we've been running a poem a day project for the last year, and we've decided to rerun it this year. It's completely free to register. And you'll get 2 hours of free Zoom training from a professional poet, Sally Crabtree, who's brilliant. Throughout the year, you get resources, ideas and book recommendations. And all you have to do is a little questionnaire at the beginning and a little questionnaire at the end. Commit to sharing a pet poem daily with your class, coming on the sessions, and then sharing your poem of the week each Friday on social media. So that's all you have to do. So if people are interested in that, simply go to our website, and under our blog, there's a poetry blog, and it tells you how to join. So do have a look at that. And then thinking about other resources to support with writing journals and the writing journey. So images are really super. So things like Pobble 365, I don't know if people are using that already, but if you're not using Pobble 365, I'd really recommend it. It's totally free. And actually it has an image for every single day of the year, but there are also ideas, grammar activities and questions around that image. And if you don't like that image, you can scroll back and find a different one. There are hundreds there. There's also a resource called Once Upon a Picture, which is really super. Once Upon a Picture, again, it's totally free, and you've got banks of images under different sections, so have a look at that one. We also really like Mrs. Wordsmith. It's a really, really good one. This has got, it says 180 words to take your storytelling to the next level. So what you've got here is sort of like the word of the day almost, but you've got a word like diverse. And then what it does on the back is it's a flip book, and on the back it tells you what does diverse mean. Oopsie, where we go. Here we go. So that gives you the etymology. It tells you how many synonyms there are. It tells you that it's used in 2.6% of stories. It gives you a story example. and so forth. So it's really, really good. And all of the illustrations are done by the Madagascar illustrators. So it's, you know, really appealing to children. Mrs. Wordsmith does loads of different resources for parents and children. And I think they are, you know, really, really worth having a look at. Oops, apologies. But also, as we said at the beginning, our best writers are our avid readers. So we want to get our children read, and plucking that language from the books that they are enjoying and using that into their writing journals. If you haven't been on our reading training, then this is free as well, Developing Reading for Pleasure. So do sign up to that. And as I said earlier, PET also runs a session on using questioning to develop comprehension. So that also supports with the reading. With regards to writing, just to let you know, we have 2 for 1 on improving boys' writing at the moment, but also 2 for 1 on our raising standards in writing. And with regards to our oracy, we've got a very special offer. It is on 2 for 1, so that's £55 for 2 teachers to come. But at the moment, we're doing an offer which is train your whole school for £100. So for less than the price of 2 delegates, you can send your whole school, unlimited teachers and TAs, on our oracy training. It cannot be booked through our website. You need to email us for details of when slots are available. So if that's of interest to you, then do have a look. Okay, so just as a synopsis then, with regards to the writing journals, I think they're a really useful resource for children because they have that language that they need to use at their fingertips. It gives them that independence and that excitement around gathering language, which we want to foster in our children. And they're particularly powerful because they take them throughout the school. So we're not, you know, reinventing the wheel every year. They are, you know, building on that, you know, that language that they have had from before. Some schools like to cover them in lovely gold paper or something really nice, or you know, something to keep them a bit more hard wearing, which is quite lovely, and giving the children a little bit of freedom with what to add to them. And as I said, you don't have to mark them, but you do need to make sure that the spelling is correct. Okay, I've saved some time for some questions and also suggestions. So somebody's saying they've recently done a Mrs. Wordsmith course and it was really useful. That's great to hear. Somebody was asking to see the inside of the writing journal. I think I've shown you that now, so hopefully that's okay. Since I'm attending the workshop today, will the next one be a repeat? Yes, all of the different dates for writing journals are all of the same workshops. It will be the same one. If anyone has any questions about how to use writing journals, how to set them up, anything that you'd like to know about writing journals that I haven't answered already, then just pop it in the chat and I will do my best to answer it for you. Any questions on writing journals? How often do you use them? On a daily basis, I would say. So as I said, do you remember that slide that we had? If I just whip back to that slide on when do you use your writing journals? As you can see, you're kind of using them all the time. I would want to have them on my children's desks all of the time, okay? So that actually it's not a big deal, as I said, to get the writing journals out. We always have them. We're always referring to them to use language that's already inside, and we are always adding to them. So I would be using them on a daily basis throughout your English session, but you might be magpieing language, you know, in other sessions too. So I would have them kind of on the tables all of the time. Anyone else? Any questions? How would you introduce them? Let's have a look here. How would you introduce them and set them up for older children who've not used them before? Yeah, it doesn't matter. You can start at any point. So if they haven't used them before, if I just, once again, I'll just go back to the Key Stage 2 slide. Excuse me, flicking through here. So what you would do is, in Key Stage 2, in Year 5, you would set one up and you'd have a character section. And then within the character section, you could leave spaces for different types of characters. So you could, if you wanted to, just start off with good and bad characters. And then from there, you could subdivide it. So you could have your evil characters, your funny characters, and so on. And you can actually add to this as you meet those types of characters in your English sessions. So as I said, if you've done a character study on Voldemort, You could pluck language to describe Voldemort as an evil character or whatever and pop it onto your writing journal. You would have your section for your settings already in there. You might have a page where you're going to be looking at other words for said, or with Key Stage 2, as I said, you might even have the other words for said classified. So you might have angry words for said, happy words for said, and so on. So it doesn't matter if they haven't done one before, you can set it up at any point in the year, and they slowly build as they go through the year. Hopefully that's answered that one. Thank you. Do you find them time consuming, or they work well alongside the usual English books? They shouldn't be time consuming, because really it's only a case of getting a book, maybe get the children to cover it or whatever. You want them to take some pride in it and be excited about it. You know, you can have the give them the contents page. You know, you might give them the headings to put on the pages, or they can just write their own. And then as it's building slowly, it's not taking additional time. What it's actually doing a lot of the time is capturing what we would have done on whiteboards and lost. So often we do other words for said on whiteboards, don't we? You know, in a guided writing session or a whole class session, and it's great, and we generate language, and then it's gone. Or we have it in a class display and it doesn't stay there forever and it's gone. So what it does is it gives a different place to capture. Obviously you do need to check the spelling, but no one said that they found them particularly time consuming, because they are little and often. You're just kind of always adding to them. So work alongside your English books. Some children are so scared of making mistakes on paper. We've introduced writing first via writing on a wipeable board. Now I can see them struggling writing things down on paper, afraid to make mistakes. Now that's a really good point, but actually they don't go into the writing journal until they're checked. So as I said, we need to make sure the spelling's right, so they don't write them into the writing journal until you've okayed it. So basically, you don't want lots of crossings out and corrections in there. That's not the type of book it is. It's meant to be your personal thesaurus. So you're plucking that gorgeous vocabulary. So you get your children to do it on a whiteboard, or they've plucked it from somewhere. They show you and you say, yeah, lovely, copy it in, no problem. So, so don't worry about that. That's absolutely fine. Anything else? Great, people are excited to start. Fantastic. Anyone else? Any questions on any other aspects of writing journals? Do let me know. As I said, just give them a go. Have a go at setting them up. Trial them in your class. If you think that they're working well, you know, see if you can roll it out to the other children and classes in your school. As I said, this training is open to as many of your teachers and TAs as you would like to attend, so do shout about it. If you do follow us on social media, if you could share a post about our free training, that would be great to get to as many people as possible. And if you are interested in the Train Your Whole School for £100 oracy session, then do email us for the details of that. And then, as I always say, if you like the session, tell someone about us. It's great to be able to work with so many of you from all over the country and the world, so do spread the word about Dandelion Learning. As I said, follow us on social media and share the free posts if you can. We run free sessions for parents as well, so just have a look on our training page, and it's got all of our premium stuff as well. Okay, if I stop there, but I'm here if anyone wants to ask me anything else. I will send you guys a recording of this session in case, because I know some of you joined a little bit late, or in case you want to look back, you've got that. And if I can help in any other way, do let me know. Don't forget, we've got lots of 2-for-1 offers, and it was great to work with you. So thanks for taking the time out of your evening to listen to me. And yeah, hope to see you on some training soon. And I'm here if anyone wants to ask.